Hey, this is gonna be a video about Falk's pressure and how to land hits once you're in pressure, or how to land optimal hits, I should say. It's not that hard to land a few hits here and there, but the real key to Falk's pressure, first things first, is keeping your opponents on the ground. Most of Falk's buttons hit pretty low to the ground, which also means that they don't hit high up enough to hit the opponent's hurt box if they're already into the air. There's a lot of moves that just go over most of Falk's buttons, and even if she has the frame advantage to do a lot of frame traps, it won't work against characters that just jump over it. So you need to know, first things first, you need to know what you can anti-air, like if the opponent jumps over some of your block strings. So in an ordinary sense, just covering Falk's basic anti-airs, Schneide is the worst, or the least reliable. If you need a fast anti-air, Schneide is not the one to go for. Schneide will get stuffed. Both Schneide and Crouching Hard Punch are 8-frame startup, but Schneide has head invuln, but head invuln does not reach quite low enough to be like the same thing as crouching. So Schneide will get stuffed on startup in situations where Crouching Heavy Punch will win or at least trade with the jump in, so Crouching Heavy Punch is more reliable. Crouching Heavy Punch also hits further behind Falk's head, and Schneide often loses to like things that are sort of ambiguous about being cross-ups or whatever. It often fails to anti-air if the opponent's too close. So Crouching Heavy Punch is your go-to. Beyond that, EX Schneide is better than both of those, but there are some situations where EX Schneide is too slow and the opponent will be able to safe jump and land and block on the ground in time, and Super is by far and away Falk's fastest anti-air at 4 frames. And totally invincible. So when you're pressuring in clean pressure situations, basically the opponent will be able to jump most of your buttons after blocking if you're like +2 or +3. So I have him jumping. So if you're +2, definitely be able to jump the standing medium kick or crouching medium kick. Standing medium kick is 8 frames, crouching medium kick is 7 frames. These are definitely can be jumped. But for most of these buttons, you will always be able to anti-air. The only thing that you won't be able to anti-air off of is, so yeah, anything like that works, +3, and you do that and they jump over it, you'll be able to anti-air. The only thing that it becomes dicey with is Heavy Punch. If you are at +2 and you swing Heavy Punch, their jump will get through cleanly. Or, goddammit. Like so. If you're +3 and you do Heavy Punch, you'll be able to hit them out of the forward jump. And by the way, forward jumping, I don't know, just in case you don't know this, forward jumping is 1 frame faster than neutral jumping or back jumping. So if the opponent's neutral jumping, you only need to be +2 for this to beat them out of the jump. But forward jumping, you need to be +3 for the standing Heavy Punch to also cover that option. And in most situations, light kick will also like hit high enough that it'll knock them out of the air, like you usually see happen to people who try to jump in the middle of pressure. So yeah, standing light kick and standing Heavy Punch are your go-tos. But anyway, so if you're +2 and you swing Heavy Punch and they jump, which will happen quite often, you will be able to, you will be able to at least do something. So you'll be able to block in time. That's basically what you'll get. They will be, if you do EX Schneide, they'll be able to block once they hit the air, unless they have like a slower jump, like some characters have. And characters with slower jump startups are totally fine because they won't be able to jump. Like if you're +2 and you swing Heavy Punch, their jump won't get off the ground in time. So it's much easier for Falke to bully big body characters that have a slower time getting off the ground than it is for her to bully just average characters like this. So you'll be able to block in time, but not much else. You'll be able to block, and you'll be able to super. So that's the first step in doing Falke's pressure, because it's super easy for people to jump out of Falke's block strings. As for just sort of pressure, I'll cover basic frame traps, but I'll give a greater explanation as to what Falke's pressure is all about. So in terms of frame traps, +3 on standing light kick and standing medium punch, +2 on most of the other things that are plus. And crouching light, yeah, even crouching light kick is +2, which is honestly rare for most characters. So she has a bunch of different little light combos and light confirms. Usually you'll do like crouching light kick into crouching or standing light punch, and then into light kick, and then you could do that into Kugel. So light kick into Kugel is a true block string at most ranges, and at some ranges it'll create a frame trap. So if I put them to block the first attack only, you can see that in this range they can block it all, but at this range it becomes, there's a gap that they can still get hit by. And usually doing your light confirms, like 3 lights, and then your standing light kick will be at the right range so that it will create that frame trap with the gunshot. Beyond that, you have like standing light kick into standing medium punch, which is a true frame trap. And then after standing medium punch, you don't have that much because it pushes them pretty far back. But you can do crouching medium kick. That's one of your go-tos. So that's a go-to, or that go-to frame trap. That's a go-to frame trap. Stuff like that, anything to that degree, and then standing medium punch usually into a single light. And that's like outside of V-trigger, that's the majority of Falke's legitimate frame traps. But Falke's pressure isn't about legitimate frame traps, honestly. It's about manipulating hitboxes and generating buffers and whiff punishes. So your best button for Falke, your 2 go-to buttons, the things that make Falke's pressure work are standing light kick and standing heavy punch. And everything else in Falke's toolkit is really just sort of to supplement those 2 tools, because those are your moneymakers. Standing light kick is the thing that like hits high into the air, it hits at a really long range, it has the best plus frames out of all of your moves. It creates the best frame traps. It links from the farthest into other stuff. It's the only thing that links into other lights without necessarily needing a counter hit. And it's the thing that will put you at enough frame advantage that you can get away with a standing hard punch. And if the opponent can't escape your standing hard punches, that makes it much easier for Falke to be able to land her hits. So, in general, when you're, like, in neutral looking to get in, you can poke with a lot of stuff. You can poke with light kick into gunshot. You can poke with crouching light punch into Kugel. You can poke with medium kick into Kugel. But those pokes are just pokes. They're meant to threaten the opponent and stop them from, like, motivate them to stop pressing buttons or getting hit by those moves, which allows you to move in to get bigger stuff. But that's not, like, those are not the be-all and end-all of your neutral game and what you're trying to accomplish. Those are just your things to stop your opponent from pressing buttons so frequently. What you actually want to do once you've trained your opponent at least a little bit is you want to get a frame advantage of either +2 or +3 by doing crouch jab or stand light kick, and then do standing heavy punch. And that's how you train your opponent. Is you get a situation where you can get a situation where you're +2 or +3, or any more plus than that if you actually land the hit with the light attack, and then do standing heavy punch. And that's how you'll be able to get hits if the opponent tries to counterpoke. Even though it is not a real frame trap, obviously, because standing heavy punch is 10 frames, so obviously, if you're just +2 or +3, it's not a real frame trap. But due to the hurt box and hitbox of standing heavy punch, this will like, doing this will more often than not beat counterpoking from the opponent. So here I have Cammy doing a variety of different counterpokes, such as, like, crouching light punch or anything that she would be trying to do if, like, she's trying to bully her way out of a block string that's not real, like standing light punch into standing medium punch. Won't beat 3-framers like that, so she would be pressing that button. If you're, like, trying to walk in, maybe not at this range, but it's like say from here to here, you would be like, she would be reverseling with that 3-framer to try and get out. So if you do standing light punch or anything that leaves you +2 into standing heavy punch, that's going to beat that, because the hurt box for standing heavy punch pulls back and Falke won't get hit in that situation. Now, standing heavy punch beats moves like this all over the place. It's a great button. Standing heavy punch has a great personal hurt box and generally beats a lot of neutral moves, like a lot of counterpokes, a lot of jabs, a lot of, like, anything like a low medium kick or whatever. It beats all of that. But it often loses to certain moves which that hit generally pretty high up into the air, like characters that have anti-air jabs, like Nikali's stand light punch is a bit of a problem for Falke's standing heavy punch. Cammy's back medium punch, and characters that have, like, sort of those gut-checking knees, like Akuma's standing medium kick, or Nikali's standing medium kick, or Balrog's standing medium kick. Those are problems for this button. And those are, like, whether or not a character has a button that's really causes a big problem for Falke's standing heavy punch, especially, like, a fast button. 5 frames or faster, really, is where that becomes an issue. And those are the matchups that I think are the absolute hardest for Falke to deal with, because that's really, like, the thing that she relies on more than anything in order to be an effective character and be able to land her hits, is she relies on, like, her standing heavy punch going over and through and then whiff punishing the opponent's buttons, because it has such a good personal hurt box and it's so much better, and then hit confirming off of it in a single hit and then getting combos off of it. That's what Falke relies on more than anything to and then everything else is just, like, filler, like ways to just keep the opponent in line so that they don't try to escape those situations, and then land your big hits with that. So yeah, when characters have, like, easy answers to Falke's standing heavy punch, that sucks for her, because she doesn't have that many other tools to work with. But anyway, so yes, that's the general idea of how it usually works in most situations. Is the opponent, as you get to, like, +2 or +3 or anything like that, the opponent tries to press a button, and standing heavy punch just wins. Let me put her to do, like, say, crouching medium punch. It just wins. So that's the essence of Falke's pressure. It's not about frame traps in the most situations. You have to do frame traps occasionally to keep your opponents in check, because some moves just like some moves will still beat the standing heavy punch. Usually standing heavy punch will win in most situations, but not all. Like, depending on the exact frames, sometimes it'll beat them, but so long as you keep it loose and you don't do everything in a mechanical fashion, if you do it to, like, the +3 of standing light kick or the +2 of crouching light punch, and don't keep it always exactly the same in terms of the frame data, standing heavy punch will most often win against counterpoking. So long as you have, like, a frame advantage to work with, because standing heavy punch will lose against big crush counter buttons, like, say, a Ken standing heavy kick. Falke's standing heavy punch loses against those neutral crush counter buttons. So long as you have enough of a frame advantage that Falke's standing heavy punch will win, if you just mess around with the frame slightly, you'll usually find yourself in situations where Falke's standing heavy punch will get the hit and won't lose. And then that's how you train them to not press buttons, which is how you get to move in to range where you can pressure with the standing medium punch, which will actually, like, you can easily combo off of on hit or on counter hit. And then if you get pushed back, but due to the pushback of standing medium punch to that range, you can still harass with that heavy punch, which will beat counterpoking. That's how you play the character for the most part. And like I said, because it's so easy to jump, you need to be on point with using your other buttons as well to just to fill in things to make it so that you're able to anti-air them if they jump over, because if you're like +2 or not at least +3 and they forward jump, they might be able to beat your standing heavy punch, or you won't be able to anti-air. So you need to use the other buttons just so that they can't do that against your standing heavy punch, but really you're just using other buttons to make room for, like, to make sure that you can get your standing heavy punch out all the time. And then there's, like, the certain buttons, like I was talking about, that will beat standing heavy punch. Like, Cammy's standing medium punch. So if I'm +3, just due to the exactness of its hurt box, if I'm +3 or +2, I will lose if the Cammy presses standing medium punch at that exact time. Now, if I just mess around, like I said, you need to play loose with Falke's standing heavy punch. Because if you use it in exact frames all the time, the characters usually have some answer to it. But if you just play loose with it, the standing heavy punch usually has more likelihood to whiff punish than it will to get beaten out. So putting in slight delays or anything like that will often make sure that you'll be able to beat their buttons far more often than their buttons will beat yours. But like I said, beyond that is usually the buttons that are capable of beating standing heavy punch on startup are a bit slower. Like Cammy's standing medium punch is 6 frames, I think. Yeah. So you can beat those with legitimate frame traps like standing light kick into standing medium kick. And because usually the buttons that they have to do in order to beat standing heavy punch, they have to do so much earlier and aren't like jabs, they're a bit slower, you can actually sometimes see like the startup of the move, because you're hitting it as late as possible if you do that. Like that. So you can actually, like, often hit confirm standing medium kick just because you see that you're going to hit the startup, you're going to hit, like, the latest possible startup of some kind of slow move, and you can hit confirm that medium kick into the catapult as well. So that is a good thing to go for. You can see that you're going to land the hit with medium kick and then cancel it into the EX catapult or whatever. And then that's, like I said, your other buttons are mainly for, like, conditioning your opponents not to press anything so that you can get away with standing heavy punch. Beyond that, there's additional buffers that you can do. Really, the only go-to one after that is, like, any buffers that you can do with your jabs into Kugel. Or, like, light kick into Kugel. So it's like, if I whiff, like, light kick here and then buffer it into releasing the gunshot, that'll often catch things if the opponent's counterpoking like that. But for the most part, like, and then you can always do, like, your lights into the gunshot, but that's like, the frame advantage that you get off of the Kugel, like, not even talking about, like, the distance that you are from them after you even land that hit, you're only +1. You're basically back to neutral after you, land the Kugel off of anything. It's really just a poke. It's not something you want to be going for too often if you could just, like, shut their buttons down, but stay close enough and add an actual frame advantage just by landing the lights without canceling them into Kugel. If they need to be motivated to stop pressing buttons, or you have, like, super or V-trigger or anything to confirm off of the gunshots, sure, definitely, go for it. But other than that, it's like... So, yeah, anyways. There's additional buffers you can do, like... sort of like Chun-Li can do with her back hard punch, where she can sort of throw it out, and it has the priority of a crush counter, so it'll beat people like counterpoking into it. Falke doesn't have anywhere nearly that good, but she can do something similar with her standing medium punch, where it doesn't have very much range, so you can often buffer it at this range, and it recovers fairly quickly, although I wish it recovered a little bit faster, being like having the range that it has. So And you can buffer that into catapults, and if they stick like any buttons into it, you'll usually get the hit like that. So medium punch, then medium punch with a buffer. Or just leaving the medium punch as is to hit confirm into a standing heavy punch. That is the essence of pressuring with default Falke. Walking backwards, like the opponent's backdashing or walking backwards, is rough to deal with. Like, your only real way of calling out backdashing, if you're +3 or +2 or anything like that, and you're at like this range, the only way for you to really beat backdashing is either canceling whatever you are +2 with into the cannon end, the crouching gunshot, which does have some benefit. Like it'll often land because depending on like what buttons the opponent's using, it'll catch them trying to counterpoke. But it should be used very sparingly. If the opponent sees you, if they're looking for it in any fashion and see you crouch down, they can really like just jump over it and punish it. But yes, this will beat backdashing. If your opponent backdashes, this will hit them out of the air. Beyond that, you can just call out backdashing with a forward hard punch, which is -10, which sucks. It becomes much better in V-Trigger, which I guess I'll start talking about in a second as soon as I finish talking about, so yeah. She doesn't have very good lows, because she can't special cancel or crouching medium kick, which means that the opponent's walking backwards against her is a big problem. You can sometimes get away with doing like anything that's like +3 or plus whatever into a down forward hard kick at a certain range, where the opponent won't be like thinking throw and then just throw you out of the startup of it preemptively. But if your opponent's really respecting you, or at least like just walking backwards because they think that that's all they have to do to get out of your pressure, you can get away with that from time to time. It's honestly not fast enough to like catch people if they are familiar with the move, have seen it before, anything like that. But you know, whatever. Like, it's there, it's plus on block. You can hit confirm it into a combo by itself on hit. It has a massive cancel window, so it's completely hit confirmable by itself. It is a low, so you know that's not entirely useless to do it in that situation if your opponents often walk backwards. Even if they're walking backwards from like this range, it puts them into proximity block like immediately, so they won't be able to walk away from it. And just poking with crouching medium kick from time to time, but ultimately there's not too much Falke can do about it, much like Cody. This doesn't really change in V-Trigger 1, which is why, so yeah, in V-Trigger 1, you get more pressure options, but not that much more. Honestly, V-Trigger 1, ironic as it sounds, is not the V-Trigger that gives you more pressure options. That's V-Trigger 2. Now, your additional abilities to do pressure or just even play neutral with this V-Trigger are you get instant air Jaeger, or you just get Jaeger in general, which is a much more rewarding version of the air fireball, which, because it starts up faster, and it's more rewarding on hit. But other than that, it's actually mostly the same, which means it's just as punishable. If you do it at like this range, if you jump and do Jaeger, they can just jump over that and get a full punish once you land on the ground. It's not really that much better. But since it comes out faster and it's more rewarding, it's better to do it as like, if you're confident the opponent's not going to like forward dash or jump or anything like that, you can sort of act like a pseudo dive kick or whatever and do that. And you can sometimes bait people's anti-airs by just jumping at them and doing things like that. You can do like jumping medium punch from a really long range, and then occasionally cancel that into the Jaeger, and that will allow you to space it out such so that it'll bounce off the ground, which will hit the fireball late enough such that you can get a forward dash and still be plus, unlike usual. However, if they see you cancel that, any of like your jumping medium punch into it, they can just jump over that fireball and then punish you. Beyond that, you get, of course, your like V skill thing into gunshot, but this loses to veer. Like, the opponent can just veer reversal this all day, and they probably should. Well, not in mid-screen, because you won't be close enough to throw ever, because the fireballs will always push them back. In the corner, they should probably veer reversal this like every time, because it'd be really dangerous to not do that. But yeah, her additional pressure tools that she gets is you shouldn't... I think that you shouldn't waste the gunshots like this unless you're in the corner. If you're in the corner and they're way stronger because the fireballs won't push her back anymore because she's already in the corner, then it's strong. Then it's useful. But like out here in mid-screen, it's like, one, this can be beaten by 3-framers just doing this over and over. And two, it's not that great. Like, it builds up a lot of white life, but it's not necessarily like... The reason why this is so strong is because you actually get close enough to do a throw. So you're doing chip damage, but you're also building white life. But because you're close enough for the throw or a throw bait, you also have the threat of being able to take that white life at any moment, which is why it does so much damage to do this throw loop over and over. It does so much damage because of that. But in mid-screen, when you can't throw, it's not the best thing to do. Instead, I would actually play like the regular game if you can, because you won't really get that much closer. Like, spend them if you have to. Medium kick into V-skill into shroud is the best option, but don't just do it over and over. Use that to get the +4 and get closer, but then use your regular pressure options with the addition of your new pressure options that you get in V-trigger. Now, your new pressure options, of course, is the ability to have more rewarding options off, like, get more reward off of your other options, basically. So, like, light kick, that actually gets you, like, a good knockdown, everything like that. You can do that instead of canceling that into Kugel, and it's great. So you have much rewarding options in that effect. If you do, like, light punch from, like, any range that you can connect V-skill, that's a real frame trap. Light punch into V-skill. And then you can just cancel that into that. Like so. So you have that tool as well, which is, you can use slightly outside the range of medium punch, honestly. And it is faster than medium punch because standing light punch is 4 frames and yada yada. Medium punch is 6 frames. You can do medium punch when you're walking forwards into V-skill. That will leave you really close. But yeah, ultimately, it's like your +4 just makes it all the better to do standing heavy punch if they're going to try and counterpoke. So yeah, ultimately, it's like, in addition to that, it gives you better options for calling out their backdashes, because you can actually legitimately do forward hard punch, which will crush counter their backdashes, and you can just cancel that into Shrot. This honestly works similar to Bison's Psycho Axe, which he can swing that down forward hard punch and then be plus on block or whatever. This works in a similar fashion because she looks like she's moving forward. It's a little slow, and it sort of, honestly, it's pretty good in the close range. Once again, you have to condition your opponents to not jump away from your block strings and buttons. But yeah, beyond that, it's really good, and you can do forward hard punch into the Shrot and stay plus on block and honestly get pretty close, and that will also crush their backdashes, so you get a really useful additional pressure option. You still don't get anything really to catch them walking backwards, but that's fine. So those are your additional pressure options in V-Trigger 1. V-Trigger 2, your pressure options are significantly stronger because V-Trigger 2 basically just gives you the ability to get a knockdown off of anything. So it's like any light kick, anything into Kugel. Knockdown. Just get a knockdown off of it. Anything that you do, you can just cancel into a knockdown. A pretty decent knockdown, honestly. Just do like light kick, knockdown. And then anytime you're like outside that range, you can just buffer. You can just buffer into a knockdown. You can buffer light kick into the Sturm, which is this move, from anywhere. You can do it over here, and if it catches a limb, you'll get a knockdown. That's how far this hits. So, your ability to get buffers like that, and combo off of your crouching medium kick, in addition to buffering your crouching medium kick, buffering your jabs, buffering your stand short, all that stuff, it's really good. And then you get the shenanigans, where you can cancel like anything into the overhead, which allows you to like sometimes escape getting punished for moves that are usually punishable. Like just stab in with catapults and then go over like the buttons that they press to punish your catapult with your overhead. Like so. Now, obviously there are ways of beating this, and it's more of a gimmick than anything else, but what's not a gimmick is the fact that you can reduce your, like, how much they can punish you, and the fact that you can cancel these things into the overhead, and if they've already sort of committed to doing, like, a counterpoke or something, then you can often get above it. And I think that this is a better way to hit the opponent low than doing crouching medium kick into the Sturm. Now, you get the ability to cancel crouching medium kick in this V-trigger, but it is, even then, it does not have a lot of cancel frames. It is not easy to confirm it that they are walking backwards. There are several other characters, like I played Sakura for a while, and I could hit confirm crouching medium kick into EX Tatsu if I saw that the opponent was still standing when I did the crouching medium kick, like walking backwards. That is not easy to do with this. You do not have very long to confirm that. So instead, I think a better option for hitting the opponent for walking backwards would actually be crouching heavy punch, or crouching heavy kick, the sweep, and then canceling that into the overhead. I think that's like a more effective, less punishable method of doing it. But that's just me. Obviously, this can still be punished, but it cannot be punished that hard. Well, it depends on the character and how strong their anti-air combos are. But yeah. I saw another player, like I was watching some other Falke players online. I saw one guy doing V-skill as part of his pressure, like just whiffing V-skill so that if they press buttons, they punch into it and then get hit. I do not think this is a very good strategy, but it does work. Like, if the opponent is pressing buttons into it. That being said, if you're just whiffing V-skill, it's really not that hard to whiff punish it. Like, it only really works against, like, players who are extremely inexperienced at fighting Falke that aren't capable of just easily punishing that on whiff. But that is one other option that I saw a Falke player using, so, like... So, yes, that is my interpretation of what the essence of pressuring with Falke is, and how to get your hits, how to motivate your opponents to stop pressing buttons. Once you reach a range, that's only for, like, sort of this space. Once you reach a range where like, counterpoking will hit you regardless of whether or not you're using standing heavy punch, you need to switch to medium punch, or, like, light kick into like light confirming, like that. But mainly just medium punch. But yeah, the heavy punch is what works at, like, this range and motivates players to stop pressing buttons for you to get into this range. And then once you're in this range, medium punch is your best bet for catching the opponent pressing buttons. And then once you're outside that range, your lights, your just checks with your medium kicks and stuff, and most importantly, your heavy punch. So, I hope that helps.